We have Raghu and Sharad here in the session. The topic that we will be discussing is about data monetization as a building block in manufacturing. I mean, we all have heard the term that data is the new oil. And, recently we also hear about data is probably the new gold. We all know that is being termed, data is being termed as oil or gold because of the monetization opportunities attached to data. But I think I would probably go a step further and say, as of today, and probably in the near future, data is probably going to be more valuable than oil and gold. Today, we have around 70, 80 zettabytes of data, which is existing around the different industries, which is getting doubled almost every 3 years. So if you really think about it, 70 to 80 zettabytes of data is like more than 10 terabytes per human being in this planet. That's like, a really, really high amount of data that is out there. And as I said, every 3 years, it is getting doubled as well. Now, unlike oil or gold, which in its form and shape has remained almost constant throughout, data is being generated in various different forms. It could be, in terms of big data, it could be discrete data, it could be various combinations of machine and other types of data that is getting generated. And the challenge is that we need to mine that data like we used to mine the gold, and we need to be able to apply algorithms and logics on top of it to actually monetize it like oil and also gold, right? So this is the challenge that we have. In the recent past, probably I would say less than 5 years, there has been a significant uptake in the momentum on how data is being looked at culturally within organizations, including the leadership, and also the belief that is coming in with more and more use cases that is getting delivered, that there is power behind this data. And a lot of the organizations are actually, really going after that in making it happen. So without much further ado, let me get into the discussions. And, let me start off with Raghu, who is with JSW Cement, who also had immense experience in JSW Steel driving a significant digital transformation initiative, which we all know that it has been in the news as well and has driven significant top and bottom line savings to the company. So with that experience, let me ask you, Raghu, how do you think the CIOs and IT professionals can contribute to increasing the organization revenue or profits or productivity by going through these digital transformation of the products and the services?
Great. First of all, thanks, Sreeji, and good afternoon, Sharadji, Sreeji, and others. Today, I mean, immense opportunity to be, happy to be here. This question on data monetization, Sreeji, like everybody knows, either it's process, product, or services that we are trying to, use this data and talk about the data monetization aspect. It could be internal, external data monetization. So I would emphasize more, considering we're talking about manufacturing and data monetization in that area. I would probably emphasize on what we had done here in JSW when I was in JSW Steel, working on the digital transformation projects there. One was on inbound logistics that was when Dolby as a plant was scaling up from 5 million ton to 10 million ton. So the capacity, there were 3 parts to this whole project. One was the raw material handling in itself, the particular RMHS. and the systems there, which included the planning cell and the systems they've been using. And then the second one was the mother, the anchorage of the mother vessels that used to come, procuring this raw material from various international locations. And thirdly was the transfer of this raw material from the mother vessel, which is anchored at the high sea, to reach to the RMHS point through the barges and the jetty. So all this had a lot of IoT-based systems, IAS systems on individual barges, how we had to coordinate. So that exactly what it brings to is the control cell, the central planning cell for RMHS, which had an entire end-to-end view. That is, number one is to look at the kind of inventory levels of the main raw material we are talking about is iron ore, coal, fluxes, and so on. And the central planning cell had this central view or a cockpit view of all the raw material parameters or the levels that were there, the stock levels that were there of these particular incoming raw materials and what had to be procured. And the second part was the planning of the mother vessels, because it would take about 90 days for a mother vessel from one location to reach to a significant port like Mumbai or Jaigarh. And from there had to be a mother vessel, a smaller ship that would get sent across to be anchored at the high sea at a smaller port like Dharamtar port. And from there you would have stevedoring and jetties. So there has to be a barge planning that needs to go on to unload the material from these particular high seas and into the barges, and the barges have to travel all the way through the Gull Island and into the Amba River and reach to the jetties and at the docking yards next to the RMHS, where they would dump the whole material, so-called these raw materials onto the conveyors. Now, the biggest challenges what was there was one was the planning at the mother vessel as to when that would arrive. How would you go about planning the barges and scheduling the barges at the Dharamtar port? And third was the barges had to reach a particular location that is through the Amba River. Now, the biggest challenge what we had was there had to be a turnaround time of each barge traveling between to and fro between the jetty and then the port. And we were at 5 million ton and we were scaling up to 10 million ton. With the speed at which these barges move would not help if we continue with the same kind of speed, and we had to look at how we reduce the speed. How would we bring this into one screen, one cockpit view for better planning and coordination between the barges, the team, the jetty team, the mother vessel or the stevedoring team, and obviously the RMHS team. So that's where we happen to use a lot of handheld device and IAS monitoring systems on the barges, considering the barges that the people on board the barges are not tech savvy, so they would not understand a lot of words onto them, though it was all color coded, kind of telling them when they can move, when they can stop, when they have to stop, and so on. And also, Sri, the interesting part about this project was also that the tide would play a role in this. While we do the planning, in case of a tide, and the draft would not take, because when the raw material is loaded onto the barge, it gets heavier and the draft gets, if it's a low tide time, you would not be able to travel through that particular river, creek. And so we had to get the data from the SO, that is the satellite systems, to tell what was the tide cycle, and then we would intimate accordingly on this system for the barge. Today, what they were doing is they would park all their barges at the Gull Island, wait for the high tide, and then move the RM. And it could take a couple of days for them to just sit there. So we kind of brought in that information as well. And in that way, we were able to streamline this process. And today, Dolby is 10MT, and we have this operations up and running. And I'm glad to share this kind of a use case and the kind of data points that we were able to integrate between these multiple sets of teams, as well as a central planning team, which had this cockpit view of all that was going on sitting in Dolby. So that's one way I would like to say that, leveraging data, the monetization, improving the process per se, that's something that I was able to be part of, and very glad that I was part of it.
Yeah, very good. I mean, it's interesting that you explained this using sort of a connected end-to-end scenario. This is not just about looking at data in isolation of one type of data. Here you have really looked at even the partner data, your own data, and within your function itself, different types of functional data. So there is really merit in looking at the scenarios that you want to improve, and thereby identifying what could be the opportunities there, and then go after and leverage data to make that happen. Yeah, that's what I could take away from you, what you were saying. Okay, thanks, Raghu. Let me move on to Sharad. Sharad, you are from the tire industry, and it's an exciting space these days, because most of the automobile and tire companies are working together to make data, to make sense out of the data for the safety of the vehicles, as well as for the comfort and other needs of the driver, or even the passengers, or maybe even maintenance, right? So I just wanted to hear from you, how do you leverage data using technologies like the sensors that you use, or IoTs, for the benefit of the business that you are representing?
Yeah, good afternoon, Sreeji. Good afternoon, Raghuji. First of all, thank you for having me here. And I'm really honored to be part of elite people like you. So let me start with the backdrop. So when I joined tire industry, I was not aware what tire is. I just thought that it would be a mold of rubber, just cooked. But a truck tire has 13 to 15 components, and it's a very complex process. And during my induction, I came to know that the experience that we have as passengers in a vehicle is dependent on how really the rubber meets the road. So tire is it gives you a good or bad experience of driving the vehicle. So I'm just setting the context. So where I will be leading you to is, I'm telling you a story about birth of a smart tire. Of late, you would be seeing a lot of advertisements of JK Tire about this JK Smart Tire. So around 5-7 years back, so our fleet team was being asked a question from the field that, look, you come and sell tires, you sell services also, you help us manage it, if you guide us how to manage it, you give us a SOP, but can you do it for us? Means then the concept of tire as a service started evolving. So we started small, put tires in some of the fleets, some of the trucks, some of the vehicles, started monitoring temperature, pressure, wears, and multiple things manually. So then means it was a journey of last 5-7 years. Then we started recording. Earlier we were recording them in logbooks. Then we moved to shared spaces like OneDrive, Google Drive, etc. Then we had a system in place. And meanwhile, the fleet team was experimenting with sensors, because they were thinking, how can they eliminate or minimize this work of manual recording of the data points? So then we were importing, most of the sensors were being imported. And of late, around 2-3 years back, we partnered with a startup called Treel, which is now being co-branded as JK Treel, which manufactures sensors just for tires. So sensors are also out of multiple types. One are rim-mounted sensors, second are the wall-mounted sensors, And third one of late, which we are about to introduce, are the sensors which are fitted within the tires during the building cycle, and they are cured that as high temperatures. So this is a story about birth of smart tires. So where it leads us to, we are able to monitor the temperature and pressure of tires wherever they are. So it leads to the need of reducing this manual efforts, but also from a driver perspective or owner perspective, from a fleet perspective, or for people like you and me who are driving the cars, we get a real-time alert of how our tires are behaving. Suppose there's a flat tire, I come out at say 8 or 7 in the dark out of my office and see the tire is flat. So I would be a bit puzzled. But if I get an alert at say 2 in the afternoon that your tire has reached a low pressure, so you can take you can ask someone, or you can go yourself and change the tire. So this smart tire, the sensors which are fitted into tires are letting us know not just the temperature, pressure, but also are helping us managing the complete life cycle of the tire also. So one important thing that I like to tell you is, which probably some people may not be knowing, is that every tire comes with a recommended pressure. If you open your car on the driver's side, you will see on the side panel, every tire, even the front and back tires, sometimes have different recommended pressures. And if we are running overinflated or underinflated, the mileages I mean from both perspective, from fuel economy of the vehicle as well as the kilometers which a tire can run, get affected, get reduced. So these sensors are, so this ecosystem, we can call it IoT or whatsoever, these sensors are, they have this machine sims integrated, in which the data is being thrown to the vehicle also, to a smart app also, and via cloud it reaches you in a dashboard format also. So this is, I would say, our humble beginning towards data monetization using the sensors. So this has given birth to the concept of a smart tire. And probably I feel, though Mr. 𝐿.C. Singh, who was supposed to be here, I could have taken his opinion on. So we feel that we are probably one of the first in India to have been there. So this is start of our journey. Looking forward to more interesting parts to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharad. Yeah, I mean, it's really a very, very exciting and interesting space, because as you said, this is still early days, in creating that kind of an ecosystem using digital technologies and leveraging tires and the car systems. I mean, this is also probably linked to some sort of safety requirements as well, right? So this can also be taken care of. Yeah, thanks for sharing this. Let me move on to another question that I wanted to ask. When we talk about data monetization, apart from collecting the data and probably curating the data or alerting triggers, when you want to really create efficiencies in terms of your manufacturing output and optimize the batches, or even if it is a continuous batch, optimize the output, then there is a lot of advanced analytics that needs to be employed, to the extent that we might have to get into predictive analytics, so that we have a chance to influence the output before the actual action happens on the shop floor. Would you have any interesting experience to share, throwing it to both of you, Raghu or Sharad, in this space, where you already achieved something significant, or you're working on, in terms of advanced and predictive analytics in manufacturing?
Can I? Sorry.
Yeah.
So actually, I would say it's extension of the current system, which I think I missed explaining. So now we have got a rich mine of data, which tells us which tire performs better on which route, under what load conditions. So for even if you are having a similar vehicle, it will depend what's the route you are traveling, what's the type of load you are carrying. It's under load, normal load, heavy load. So even we go, there are some things which are called super heavy loads. So we get all that data, and this data serves as a very informative input to our PDC, product development team. One, and secondly, also we use the survival analysis to see what's the end life of my tires. For commercial tires, though it's not prevalent in the passenger car tires. So what happens, the tires, so it's called the initial tire. Then after they go to 2, 3, 4 retread cycles. So means if for first run it is giving you lakh kilometers. So in subsequent retreads, the body carcass of the tire will ultimately give you 4 to 5 lakh kilometers during its lifetime. So all of this data is very important, and sometimes we also able to do a preventive. So this preventive is not per se, I will say, analytics. This preventive is more in terms of alerts that your pressure is down or up. So then alert is sent to the driver who's driving. So they can go to the nearest JK service center or any center to get the pressures checked, taken care of. But yes, from a survival benefits, survival analysis, we are able to predict the life of the tires. And also we are able to see whether our tire as a service model, are we somewhere, are we going into the red, if God forbid if that happens. So we have been able to reach multi-crores of this business as of today, as we speak today. And apart from that, so this was an extension of what we were speaking, and preventive maintenance, we all know. And Raghu would also, probably as we were discussing earlier, also Raghu would be throwing more light on that. So I leave preventive maintenance or prescriptive maintenance part to Raghu. Will that be okay, Raghu?
Absolutely, not a problem, sir. But yeah, I think I completely agree with you, Sharadji. With respect to, for example, I'll give you an example of what we're doing with one of an MNC from London, where we are kind of working on AI, ML related data structuring, where we're talking about inventory optimization and its correlation to downtime reduction. Now, when we talk about that, the next logical step is what is the predictive or prescriptive data points or outcomes that would be available on the shop floor. Now, that is something that the team is currently trying to figure out, because what we're talking about is a downtime reduction, and so that is downtime reduction. It would be a planned versus an unplanned downtime. Now, a planned downtime is something that you would want to basis your historical trends, and then obviously either a predictive or prescriptive input that will come in. So that part is something that we are still working on for our cement operations in couple of plants, Nandyal and Vijayanagar. That is not done yet. But I would say from a predictive maintenance point of view, there have been solutions that we have implemented in the past in steel, which unfortunately, while we had done a lot of pilot, we were not able to come up with that kind of the outcomes that we had predicted. For example, I'll give there was something called as an integrated production quality management system. So the idea behind having that system was to have a first time right approach. Rather, when you roll a particular slab, it goes through multiple 9 or 10 different process stations, and the defect is identified at the process station number 8. That means you have spent a lot of amount of resources to reach there and then call it a quality defect. However, the idea was to have the first time right approach, that is right at the beginning, the step 1 of the process station. While we tried to implement that, we had significant challenges in terms of the data that was and the algos that we had planning for, and that the array of deviations, or you can say outliers, that were there was very challenging for us to implement, and we had to kind of wind back to relook at the processes that we were trying to correct to implement this first time approach from an operation point of view, not from a maintenance point of view. From a production operation point of view is what I can throw some light on, Sreeji.
Okay, thanks. So when you were trying to do this, Raghu, before you could get into the analytics part of it, what other challenges did you face? Did you have the data available? Was the organization believing that this is something that needs to be invested in? Can you also share some of those kind of challenges that you would have faced?
And absolutely, Sreeji, you got the right point. When I didn't want to bring it up, but yes, we were not ready with the kind of data or the data lake that would be required for us to come out with that kind of insights. There was a lot of heuristic and unstructured data as well, contributing to the decision making and the processes that we were trying to align as a part of this pilot. And that was one reason that we kind of got back to the drawing room, to the conference room, saying something is amiss. I mean, the data that's coming and the kind of analysis that we are getting of the data doesn't seem to give the insight that we actually want. And yes, after that, there has been a decision that has been made, and there's a data lake that is being prepared, which would connect to your L1, L2 systems, and also integrate with your level 3 planning systems and level 4, obviously. So that data lake is what we are now going with. Now we have got historian enabled in all our plant operations. So that the level 3 data is flowing, the SCADA PLC data flows into the historian, and then we could consume it for much better insights.
And when you do that, you are touching the sorry, Sharad.
Sorry, I have a contrarian point of view. Just
please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, when we talk of the extent that Raghuji is talking about, it's quite capital intensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So means we also have done couple of journeys, but we did it the other way around. We started with whatever data was available, can we do something on it? So instead of look, these industries that you are in, steel, cement, or tire, these are very capital intensive industries.
Yes.
And here the ROI on the investments is low. Means probably at the EBITDA level, you hardly reach 12, 13, 14%, best in the class. It's even if you reach there, it's great. There have been times where for many years they were in single digits also. So I that's why I just pointed out, not to offend anyone.
No, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. People believe that data lake is must, but what I feel is that to be more practical, I start with whatever data I have. Suppose there are hundreds of parameters and I can get data even for 12 of them, then I can do a EDA for them and then probably do the data modeling, etc. to achieve reach there. So I'm just quoting two examples. We tied up with a couple of startups in this space. So there's a big machine which is you can consider as a big mixer in which the tire, the rubber, chemicals are mixed. So we were able to get a predictive maintenance alert for the bearing side. So we took a shutdown, replaced the bearing in 2 hours, else it would have been a shutdown of 48 hours. So in another case, we have sensors on electric motors with any moving devices with rotor, which let us know by diagnosing the Fourier series algorithms, they are able to tell you that when this machine rotor is going to fail. So these means we have not deployed it across. And another example is we of late means looks like this is one of our star performers, the digital claims. So now if you have any problem in your claim, you go to any JK dealer using a digital app which is supported adequately by ML and AI engines. They will replace your tire in 5 to 10 minutes flat. Earlier it used to take multiple days, 3, 4, 5 days. So that is the means sometimes you can build on what you have. Yes, the ultimate goal is where Raghuji is striving for.
No. Correct. Sharadji, I mean, while now if I'm talking from your point of view, if I look at it in cement, yes, we can leverage the existing data that is there. And we could go about I have my data scientist doing some various RFM analysis and so on to churn out very interesting insights into it. But if you look at steel, I mean, it's a different ball game, I mean, it's a sea out there, and the amount of data that comes out, it cannot be looked at in isolation. So that is the reason that and your friend Mr. Dheeraj Sinha was spearheading this, that the data lake was very imperative in that situation.
Plus I think there are actually two schools of thought here. Is that when you set out a journey like this in any organization, if you are lucky, you might have a data set where you can actually monetize, but if you take an initiative to leverage the data set that you have without any meaningful outcome, then the belief in such a transformation initiative does not get established. So I guess you will have to look at what is it available, and then, can you deal with that in a meaningful sense, or do you need to, create data sources and data lakes and things like that. I just want to go back to a point that you were saying, when you were talking about, and actually there is a question as well from the listeners here, which is connected to this. The question is, if my data is sensitive, is it possible to monetize? I think that is the question. Plus also, how can sensitive data be shared with alternative, with I guess data market? I think So I guess the point here the audience is also asking is, when you touch the shop floor equipments and devices, that's operational environment, the data security and other aspects around that becomes very crucial, because we all know a lot of the machines and instruments probably does not have security as a main agenda for them. And this becomes an issue when you connect these devices into the company network. Did you have challenges like this, and how did you deal with it?
When we talk about sensitive data, it's really, I would say, it's based on the sensitivity of the data that you'll have to take a call. But I'm adding just one more layer to it, that we have to look at the privacy perspective. Is it a data which has something to do with privacy of a customer, of an employee, of anyone? Are we breaching those laws of the land? It can be laws of the land vary from place to place, but at a higher level, they are very similar. You cannot share anything about, even if I know multiple things about Sreeji, so it's a sin if I share them publicly. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt, that what all has to be done. And about security, so the best practices used to be that you have a separate IT network and a separate plant network. IT/OT network used to be separate. Now coming with IoT, they are getting merged. The differentiation or the boundary is getting blurred. So now we have to be very cautious and put in adequate security measures. I was having a call with someone in the morning. He said that it's a cat and mouse game. The hackers are always ahead of you. So we have to be very cautious in putting the data out there and have whatever protocols, whatever practices, but still I'm a believer, whatever data is not intended to be used outside of your system, please keep it isolated. I still believe that way. That's my thought. Over to you, Raghuji.
No, absolutely, absolutely, I agree, Sharadji. I mean, when it comes to, IT/OT platform, yes, but whenever we're talking about data for, outside, I mean, obviously you'll have those security protocols, the firewalls. You could probably have a DMZ server farm that you would maintain, and you would route all the interactions between yourself and outside through this DMZ farm. I think that would that would be the most safest thing to do when you are talking about sensitive data, and that's the way we do it here in JSW.
Yeah, probably
I've also
you would be having a better idea, because you are in industry which has more sensitive data.
Yeah.
Plus also, what I've also seen is that one is a security aspect. The other one is when you want to protect these machines and instruments, you put the right antivirus or whatever you want to put into it. And then there are a lot of times a conflict between the embedded systems of the machines and instruments and the antivirus that you put. And the OEMs come back and say, no, you're going to put this antivirus. So all these discussions keep happening. So these are also challenges that I've seen which we
Absolutely.
will have to work with the OEMs, I think, to get over it. Okay, let me just move on a little bit on this and talk about the actual data management itself. The data sourcing, data curation, data ingestion. That end-to-end process of data management. Do you have any interesting thoughts or examples where you would have used the likes of advanced technologies, AI type of technologies to make the management of data faster and better? The reason I'm asking this is many a times the challenge is that when you when you have the data in a data lake or in a central server or whatever, and then you analyze and you get some outcome, many a times it might be a little too late to actually influence some of the outcomes. Maybe you can do it in the next cycle. So the process takes too long is one complaint that I usually hear from the different stakeholders. Have you employed any these kind of technologies to make it faster and better?
Sreeji, from our, the way we are looking at data right now is, we've kind of built a nudge or a nudge engine, so to say, where all our customer related data, for example, is kind of stored in there, and the churning is happening within that particular piece. So we are also looking at year on year, month on month trends, the churning of customers, be it that, or if there is so we have a dealer network, the sub dealers, influencers, and so on in cement, typical channel, if I look at the channel side of it, and the kind of data that we maintain of these set of people, right? And we look at the churn month on month for this kind of customers, and what is the kind of trend that was happening between this particular, year on year, month on month of the previous year. That's something that there are algorithms that are running consistently, and the triggers of outliers, for example, in terms of the volumes lifted or the kind against the step targets that have been maintained, and the volumes lifted, there is an automated nudge basis. That kind of data set is pushed to that relevant area sales manager for him to act upon, and so on. So that kind of nudges or algorithms by a data scientist is being maintained in an isolation through a nudge engine that we have built in. I don't know if that helps, if that answers the question, but yeah, around the data and how we are managing the customer data, this is how I would look at it, and I'd like to put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably I won't be having any experience in use of AI for data management per se, as Raghuji was explaining. Means so there are things like workflows, or so those can be, we have been able to automate them, but to manage just the data part, I'll have to think again. But it's an interesting.
Have you maybe? What I have experiences in. There are different types of ways to look at it. When you look at data, there could be repetitive data tasks, which might be out there. There might be a little bit more fuzzy sort of data that you need to handle. For example, the reading, the NLP sort of technologies that is used to read the data and then make sense out of data. It's not always a repetitive nature, or it's not always so easy to precisely nail. So in the repetitive task, I see that there is a lot of interesting RPA type of technologies which is used, and which is rule based, and hence it is not so much of advanced technology, but RPA in itself, it's a technology advanced. But I'm saying the likes of AI is not being used. But when it comes to the fuzzy area, I have seen that this type of data is being used in finance type of domain, like invoice management, for example, how the invoice is read using NLP side type of technology with 80-90% accuracies, throwing exceptions for the remaining, and hence, it becomes much faster to deal with that kind of processes. But there are now newer technologies which is out there in terms of actual extraction of data from your source systems, how you then curate it, model it, join it, and then make it available for the data lakes and the data warehouses, so that the end-to-end time from source to actual usability, which used to sometimes be overnight kind of process, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours process, this can be reduced. But this is not a very mature area yet. But I think, for the audience benefit, this is potentially one of the area that a lot of your internal stakeholders or maybe even external stakeholders might have complaints that, it takes too long. And sometimes in the morning, the batch process has failed, the data is not available, and hence, that day's insights are not available for your sales force or for your service personnel or whoever we are talking about. So there are these kind of AI enabled technologies which is out there, which can actually reduce the data processing time and also pick up issues or failures happening in the pipeline, so that it can either alert somebody to take action or maybe try to auto fix as much as possible, so that you definitely have the data available by the morning. So that's the kind of technologies which is out there, so people could actually try them out.
Yeah. So here I have a point, Sreeji.
Yeah.
So probably means I am exploring. So I have heard a lot about these auto ML platforms, which claim that you provide them the raw data, they can do the ETL, they can do the EDA, they can do data, the what if scenarios, etc., and reduce the entire cycle from months to weeks in preparing a model and giving you insights. So one of my sister concerns out of the groups has already started working on that. I am also exploring. So probably that's the way where future lies. But yes, I'll have to use it to believe it and then convey. But from our audience perspective, that's also another interesting area, adding to what you had said, Sreeji. Thank you.
Okay, good. I think probably we'll take a couple more minutes to sort of summarize any other interesting data monetization examples that you might have in your organization which you would like to share, and then we can take questions from the audience for another 5 minutes after that. So Raghu and Sharad, if there is anything which you are really itching to share in terms of other data monetization examples, please feel free to share. So.
Well, I don't know if I'd like to share an example of cement in terms of how we use the data of the I happen to have a dealer app released some time back where this was a B2B app for our dealers, and what we wanted to do was not just give the dealers an option to just place an order or look at their ledger or look at what's the status of the order and so on. I mean, we have everything that I just said, including the track and trace for them to pinpoint and see where the location, where exactly we integrated the third-party service which gives us the GPS location of the vehicle or the truck at any given point in time. So this particular app that we gave to the dealer, number one, gave them a wow factor in giving this kind of input, like an IoT-based integrated system on one single dashboard, talking about all their performance, about their financial status, order status, as well as pinpointing to the location real time. We also utilize data in the form of data wrap. Obviously, we kind of utilize that to prompt the dealer to place an order to reach a particular target just by looking at his trend. We prompted him to make payments because we knew what was the cycle. When would he usually make payment basis his historical trend? We would prompt him and tell him to make a payment. We also prompted him as a nudge on various schemes that were coming in, as well as on the cash discounts he could avail, clearing a certain payment which were within the particular slab, looking at the schema that we maintained, and we would trigger a particular nudge to the dealer on the app, prompting him to make a payment. And he was very happy to do that, because earlier he would never know, or he would not keep a track of when he would want to play, what would be ideal if I place an order at this time or make a payment at this time. Making a payment now would, get me so much of, we all love cashback, so isn't it? So the dealer obviously likes the discounts, cash discounts, and he probably misses it by a day or two because he's not aware. Now we kind of, looked at the data, wrapping that data with those analytics, we kind of started nudging them, and this is proven to be very successful. Just wanted to add that bit of how we were trying to, use the data and try and use that for improving certain areas which were of in the best interest for the organization.
Yeah. So what I'd like to add, Sreeji, is the question that I have been, as a personal level, grappling with is monetization of data for a manufacturing industry like us or like yours, anyone's, means how much ethical is it to monetize it externally? Means internally you can monetize it.
Correct.
But how much you can monetize it externally without compromising the sensitivity or privacy of the stakeholder? That is one. And another is, we all buy data. We get demographic data, we get locational data from these multiple providers. So who's probably the core intent is they collect that information, they do surveys, and they do provide that information. So this is another question, means probably it's an open question, I don't have an answer, that we have to be very careful per se in actually monetizing and getting it converted to cash.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think especially in the scenarios where GDPR type of regulations are coming, which is also coming in India with the latest IT Act. This has to be dealt with very carefully so that you are not, getting on the wrong side of, the law. So yeah, absolutely a valid point. I would probably like to share one example from, my type of industry where advanced analytics is being used significantly for manufacturing, is about, yield management and golden batch identification. This is typically you hear in many industries, but this is something which is actually happening in many of the companies. I'm sure it is happening in your organizations as well. But I just want to point out that if anybody is thinking about starting this journey in your organization, and if you're looking at the manufacturing operations, this is the probably the first use case that you should go after in terms of looking at your 2-year, 3-year data, get it digitized, and then look at it, apply the different models through your EDA phase, and see how you can identify the golden batch parameters so that you can optimize the yield to the best possible outcome in every batches that you run. Okay, thank you very much. I think we are getting some questions now. We have only a couple of minutes left. Let me just go to that. Can you throw some AI ML touch points in O&M? I guess it is O&M in power industry, where expenses can be reduced by proactive preventive maintenance rather reactive maintenance. O&M.
Yeah, operations and maintenance.
Operations and maintenance. Okay. Yeah. So, any of you want to give it a go?
Yeah, means look, means whether it's actually ML or AI or just rule based, means in some of the cases need not be, means we do not actually need to use ML or AI for each and everything. So there are multiple things which can be used. One which Raghuji talked about is obviously predictive maintenance. If we can reach that level, that can help you save some of the monies that you are spending. And apart from them, you can build on you can try to have a correlation between the O&M spends and the productions, outages. Multiple factors can be correlated to see when it is peaking and when it is ebbing. That's just a thought. Raghuji, you'd like to add?
So a specific question here is on the power industry. We are not from the power industry, but I can actually probably try to give an example. This is a case study that I have read in most of the electricity discoms across the country, the aggregated technical and commercial losses with which they have AT and ATEC losses used to be more than 60%, in the beginning of this century. As we speak, it has come down significantly to 10% or roundabouts there. And I think if you go to the BSES website, you will see a specific example on the New Delhi Electricity Board, where how they have actually gone and achieved this. One first was obviously about digitizing the sources of data, then actually looking at what can they do to reduce this kind of losses, including theft that used to happen. Okay, and then they have gone into metering at homes. So first they looked at the industrial sector, how they can reduce theft and things like that. That itself gives them some 10-20% reduction. Then they have put meters at homes and smart meters at homes, so they could understand the customer usage patterns, and then they can even actually do a point in the day billing, evening billing, morning billing, noon billing, all those kind of things. And now they have gone ahead and put into more advanced technologies like IoTs and sensors across the transmission lines to see where they have losses, where they have certain assets, distribution transformers or assets underperforming. Do they need to go and do take a downtime for plant maintenance? All those kind of initiatives have been taken by different electricity boards in the power industry, which has actually given surplus electricity without generating more electricity. So this is a very, very interesting use case in the power industry.
Very interesting.
Do we have any more questions? I think we have run out of time as well, Navneet, right?
So it was really enlightening to be with both of you, Sreeji and Raghuji. So we'll catch up on a personal front also. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, Sharadji, Sreeji, thank you so much. I'd connect over LinkedIn with you folks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining in. That was a wonderful panel discussion.